Today, I'm breaking down 7 moments when the IRS stepped off the sidelines and went head-to-head with some of pro baseball's biggest names. From Hall of Famers to World Series champs to obscure role players, nobody was too big or too forgotten to get a visit from Uncle Sam. Let's take a look at what happened when the taxman came calling for pro baseball players. Today, on Rounders, a history of baseball in America. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another week, another episode. I am your host, Jeff Lambert. For our listeners and viewers who may not be based in the United States, April 15th, the day that this episode is coming out, is a very important day for Americans because it is the deadline for us to file our federal taxes with the U.S. government. So this can be a nerve-wracking time of year for individuals to make sure they get everything in by the deadline. The government doesn't tell us what we owe outright. It's something that we have to go through and get our paperwork from our employers and be able to calculate all that using different softwares and then send this out. Sometimes people get a return. Sometimes people owe money and they have to figure out how to pay it. And then you have people who decide not to file at all, and there can be penalties for doing so. So MLB players are not exempt from this. And there have been cases throughout U.S. history where we've seen professional baseball players run afoul of the Internal Revenue Service, the agency of the U.S. government responsible for collecting and monitoring taxes, and what happened in those particular situations. We're going to look at those today. I thought it would be appropriate to do an episode on this, and I really couldn't find a lot of information on anybody that had done a comprehensive look at this before with baseball history. So new ground being tread here. I had a lot of fun researching this. I hope you have as much fun learning about some of these situations. Some of these names, you have obscure role players got involved in, below the level types of situations where they decided not to pay taxes or tried to avoid them. But we also have some big names on this list that might surprise you if you're not familiar with some of these individuals having financial issues either during their playing career or after. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I think you're going to love this. All right, starting first on our list, we're going to go with some more recent cases to be able to outline that this isn't just something that happened 50 to 75 years ago. This has happened even just a few years ago where we've had cases of tax crimes involving MLB players. So number 1 on this list is a gentleman named Trevor Crowe. So Crowe wasn't exactly a household name during his time in the majors, but in 2020, his name did hit the airwaves for all the wrong reasons. That September, Crowe was sentenced to 3 years probation and ordered to pay over $85,000 in restitution to the IRS because he failed to report more than $300,000 in income from illegal gambling operations. So according to federal prosecutors, he, quote, engaged in high-stakes gambling and chose not to report the cash flowing his way, which the IRS didn't take kindly to. So he faced up to 3 years in federal prison for this, but he did ultimately avoid jail time. So Crowe ended up pleading guilty to one single count of filing a false tax return. And while the restitution, it helped him avoid a harsher sentence, but there was a message that was very clear from the federal government. That was no matter if you're a star or even if you're someone who never really made prominence during your career, Uncle Sam still expects his cut. So there was a quote from U.S. Attorney Justin Herdman at the time who oversaw the case. And he said at the end of this, at the conclusion, quote, those who make money through illegal gambling and then try to hide that income will be held accountable, end quote. Now let's talk about Crowe's career before this happened. He was a former first-round pick by the Cleveland Indians in the 2005 draft. So he was selected 14th overall out of the University of Arizona. And he made his big league debut in 2009. He played parts of 4 seasons, primarily with Cleveland, and later he had a brief stint with the Houston Astros. So over the course of that career, he hit .240 over 205 games, but he had just 2 career home runs and 36 RBI. He had speed, he had versatility that made him a serviceable outfielder, but he never quite lived up to that draft day expectation of being that first-round pick. All right. Number 2 on our list, Eric Hilgis. So Eric's another name that probably doesn't ring a lot of bells for most baseball fans, but you will remember him after hearing this. So in 2022, just 3 years ago as of the date of this recording, he became a supporting character in a huge off-field drama involving an illegal sports gambling ring with another minor league player, a guy by the name of Wayne Nix. So as an agent for Nix's high-rolling, under-the-table illegal gambling ring, Hill just got involved by helping manage bets and then helping with player payouts. And the clientele was large. It included other pro athletes, celebrities, and executives of high finance companies. So there were other individuals that took part in this illegal gambling ring that also got sucked into this. Notably, Yasiel Puig, the former All-Star Dodgers outfielder, was also charged in a related case to this gambling ring. And he had to face a judge for making false statements to federal investigators about placing bets during this gambling operation. His case is separate. He actually was able to plead out. But Hilgis, for his part in this, was charged with 2 counts of filing false tax returns and for failing to report over $340,000 in income to the IRS between 2018 and 2020. Wow. So in 2023, he was sentenced to 3 months of home detention, and he was ordered to pay $194,701 for taking part in this illegal gambling operation. Now, before his legal trouble, Hill just carved out a modest career on the mound. He was drafted by the Mets in 1991. He spent most of the decade in the minors before debuting with the Detroit Tigers in 1999. He also found brief homes with the Oakland A's from 2000 to 2002, and he made 45 appearances and posted a 3.89 ERA. Not bad. It's reliable. He was a classic middle-of-the-rotation innings eater. So he finished his career with an 8-3 record with a 4.72 ERA, and he had about over 124 innings pitched. So that is Eric Hilgis, number 2 on our list. Number 3, we go to a guy named Jerry Koosman. So Jerry Koosman was a veteran of veterans for MLB in terms of his time. He spent 19 years in the big leagues mowing down hitters. But in 2009, the longtime Mets lefty faced a different kind of opponent, which was the U.S. government. So Koosman was sentenced to 6 months in a federal prison for willfully failing to file tax returns from 2002 to 2004. He pleaded guilty to 1 misdemeanor count as part of a deal with prosecutors, where he admitted that he stopped filing taxes after falling in with some anti-tax conspiracy theorists who convinced him that income taxes only applied to federal employees and D.C. residents. So the judge on this case did not mince words. He stated, quote, "It is a serious blemish on an otherwise outstanding life," end quote. So Koosman, to his credit, he expressed regret over his decisions. He said, quote, "I shouldn't have listened to those people about tax returns," end quote. And he went on to deliver a public message as well and said during an interview, quote, "Pay your taxes. I'm looking forward to doing that and getting on with the rest of my life," end quote. So the judge obviously was unmoved by those pleas for leniency. He ordered Koosman to report to prison on November 3rd of that year. Now, for my older listeners, Mets fans especially, you probably remember Koosman for different reasons. He was Hall of Famer Tom Seaver's co-ace during the Miracle Mets 1969 World Series run. Koosman actually won 2 games against the heavily favored Orioles in that World Series, and he was the pitcher during the title-clinching Game 5. He finished that season with a 17-9 record and a 2.28 ERA, and then he posted a career-best 21 wins in 1976. Over his career, he racked up a 222 and 209 record and had a 3.36 ERA. This guy was no slouch. He was traded to Minnesota in 1978, and Koosman finished his career by bouncing around between the Twins, the White Sox, and the Phillies. Despite those years with the Mets, he's also famously known for giving up Pete Rose's 4,000th hit in 1984, and then he retired in 1985. So Kuzmin went to federal prison, he served his time, and he kept a low profile after that. Number 4 on our list is a name that might surprise you, Tony Gwynn. There are few hitters in baseball history as universally beloved as the late, great Tony Gwynn. He's one of my all-time favorite hitters next to Ted Williams. He was a Hall of Famer, if you're not familiar. He won 8 batting titles. He hit over 300 for 19 straight seasons, and he racked up 3,141 hits. And he did it all over the course of spending 20 seasons with one team, the San Diego Padres. That 338 career average is the highest by any player since the aforementioned Ted Williams. And Tony Gwynn wasn't just known for his numbers. He was known for being one of the first guys to, well, I shouldn't say one of the first guys. He was known in that decade as being a guy who was one of the most meticulously prepared whenever he took the field. So he was very well known for studying very carefully every pitcher he was going to face. And he was fiercely loyal to one franchise throughout his entire career. He was actually dubbed Mr. Padre as a result. He was the face of the Padres during these years. But even Tony Gwynn had his flaws. So early on in his career, Tony Gwynn filed for bankruptcy, reportedly owing over $1.1 million due to a string of poor financial decisions. So according to multiple resources, while I was searching this up, including articles from ESPN, Gwynn was billed by the IRS in 2003, 2007, and 2009 for more than $400,000 in unpaid income taxes. Now, it's worth noting that Gwynn's financial troubles were largely overshadowed by his grace and goodwill in San Diego. He was well loved by the fans. He was a community pillar even after retirement. He coached at San Diego State. He mentored young players. He stayed connected to the game until he passed, unfortunately, in 2014. That helped him avoid any official charges, jail time, or otherwise penalties that were issued by the IRS. So he had carried that very large bill with him. I wasn't able to find any information whether he was actually able to pay that all back, but he did not face any additional jail time or anything like that from the IRS. But they did come after him. And I thought that was interesting. Number 5 on our list is the great Pete Rose. So Pete Rose, if you're not familiar, owns more hits than anyone who ever played the game. 4,256 hits to be exact. He was a 17-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, and he was the 1975 National League MVP. So Rose defined being that guy that put in work at the plate. So he was also known for being a hard-nosed player. He would barrel into guys when he was base running. He was known, there's this famous clip of him barreling into Ray Foss at home plate. He would slap singles wherever he wanted, hit it from both sides of the plate. Nicknamed Charlie Hustle, never took a day off or a playoff. But after his playing days ended, his legacy got tangled in a lot of off-the-field controversy. And it's not just the gambling that we've heard so much about. As a matter of fact, in 1990, Rose pled guilty to 2 counts of filing false income tax returns. He failed to report over $350,000 in income earned from autograph signings, and that included memorabilia sales and gambling winnings. So the court ordered him to pay $366,000 in back taxes, and they slapped on a $50,000 fine for good measure. But the biggest blow was Rose was actually sentenced to 5 months in a federal prison in Marion, Illinois, and he served time from 1990 to early 1991 for these crimes. Now, upon release, he also had to serve 1,000 hours of community service. The judge on his case, a guy named Judge Arthur Spiegel, he said during the sentencing that Rose's celebrity didn't entitle him to play by the rules. He was famously quoted for ending by saying, quote, "The law is the law," end quote. So this tax case was interesting because it's another crack in the foundation of Rose's post-career life and bid for the Hall of Fame. He was banned from Major League Baseball for betting on games, including some that involved the Reds while he was their manager. That ban has kept them out of Cooperstown to this day.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength, Hannity! Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Hannity! Hannity, bring it on!
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
All right, folks, you're going to have to go back with me for this next one to 1989. This doesn't involve one player. This involves a who's who lineup of baseball royalty. And these individuals gathered together in Atlantic City for a massive memorabilia event known as the Super Show 1. Great name, huh? So this was billed at the time as the biggest event of its kind. And it really was, because the event featured members of the 500 Home Run Club. It had members who were living Hall of Famers that people got to meet. So listen to this lineup if you went to this show. Individuals you can meet and get a memorabilia signed from or purchased. So the guys that were there were Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, Reggie Jackson, Harmon Killebrew, Eddie Matthews, Frank Robinson, Mike Schmidt, Mickey Mantle, Duke Snider, Willie McCovey, Pete Rose was there too, and Tony Perez. So why would all these players show up to a large memorabilia event that was off-field? Really what it comes down to, they were offered thousands of dollars in cold hard cash just for showing up for a few hours and signing some autographs. So reportedly, players collectively earned almost $245,000 over 3 days for showing up to this event. And many of them, this was the problem, didn't report a dime of it to the IRS. So this report became the centerpiece of this late 80s IRS crackdown, not just on baseball, but on the upper class in general. And we saw the baseball memorabilia industry really getting lasered in on by the IRS as well. I mean, you had promoters, they were shelling out big money, mostly in untraceable cash, for players to show up and sign autographs and make public appearances. So at Super Show 1, we know some facts from the court documents. So players received fees like, for instance, Ernie Banks. He got $3,600 for coming and showing up. Mickey Mantle got $57,000. Keep in mind, this is 1989 money too. There were some participants after the fallout of this who faced legal consequences. The two I think that got it the worst were Duke Snider and Willie McCovey. They both ended up pleading guilty to tax evasion. But many of the others managed to avoid prosecution and were able to hold out through some creative legal maneuvers to just be able to stay ahead of it until the statute of limitations expired in 1996. So not a lot came from this in terms of jail time or major penalties. Like I said, a couple of them ended up facing some issues because of it, but a lot of these living legends were able to avoid any sort of consequences for taking part in this scheme. And that brings us to the last individual on our list, the great Darryl Strawberry. So Darryl Strawberry, he was one of the top sluggers of the 1980s, but off the field, unfortunately, it became synonymous with his on-field success. He was known as being a guy that really dealt with a lot of substance abuse issues. I mean, nevertheless, he was just amazing to watch. I mean, we're talking about a guy who hit moonshot home runs, just someone who was very exciting to watch on the field. But in 1995, in addition to the on-field and off-field spectacles, he did run into the IRS. So in that same year, he pled guilty to 1 count of tax evasion, and he admitted that he failed to report between $75,000 and $120,000 in income between 1986 and 1990 to the IRS. So that unreported income, that included money earned from, like we talked about previously, autograph signings, paid appearances, memorabilia sales. All of those added up during a time when Strawberry was one of the most marketable stars in baseball. So he took advantage of that and went to these appearances, but he didn't claim it, unfortunately, on his taxes. So he ended up signing that plea deal, and under that plea agreement, Strawberry faced up to 3 months in prison. But in a show of leniency, the judge on the case, a guy named Barrington Daniels Parker Jr., spared Strawberry time behind bars. And instead, he sentenced the former Mets and Yankees slugger, I should say, to 6 months of home confinement, 3 years of probation, and 100 hours of community service. He also was forced to undergo mandatory drug abuse counseling. So at the time, I think this might have played into it. Strawberry was already in the middle of a very public struggle with substance abuse. And Judge Parker seemed to have noted that because he said in some of the court documents, this is a quote, he said, quote, "A man in trouble needs help, not punishment," end quote. Thought that was a very interesting clip from that. So if you're not familiar with Darryl Strawberry, he was an 8-time All-Star. He was the National League Rookie of the Year in 1983. He hit 335 career home runs. He was part of 4 World Series winning teams, and that included the 1986 Mets and the late 90s Yankees. So he had the off-the-field substance abuse issues, but he also faced a lot of injury issues that really shortened his career. And he never reached, I think, what a lot of people thought at the beginning of his career that would have been a Hall of Fame level sort of career that he would have put together. Those things really hobbled it and kept him from reaching that level, unfortunately. Well, folks, that recaps our 7 pro baseball players that ran afoul of the IRS and got into tax trouble. Lessons for us to make sure that we also make sure to pay our taxes and remember that Uncle Sam's always going to get his nickel. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you were able to listen to it on tax deadline day, a little bit of a way to fit in the day with the topic. Also, I'd like to ask you just a couple favors before we end the show. Number one, if you haven't left a review for the show, I would love it if you did that. You can go onto the podcast app of your choice. You can leave like a star rating. You could also leave a little note. Doing that, it really helps because it puts me deeper into the algorithm for people that are interested in baseball and baseball history. So review counts matter. Even if you can just like write one sentence or give me a star rating, that would be really helpful. Second thing I'd like to ask your help with is I started a YouTube channel. For those of you who may want to see visuals along with listening to it, you can find me on YouTube just by searching for Rounders Podcast. I'm trying to hit the subscriber minimum, so I'm able to, again, be able to get in front of more people. So if you could go onto YouTube and just subscribe to Rounders Podcast, that would be amazing. And then the third favor I ask of you is recommend the show to a friend, someone in your life who likes baseball. I'm trying very hard this year to make sure we're putting out content every week because I really wanted to make 2025 a year of growth for the show. I appreciate all of those of you who have been with me since the beginning. If you're hopping on the train now, I'm happy to have you and bring someone with you. It really helps me in terms of motivation and wanting to do more with this based on the amount of people that actually make this a part of their week. That means a lot. I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this because I really want to help grow baseball in terms of its popularity with current and future generations. And I think baseball history is a great vehicle to get there. All right, folks, those are my favors. If you can help me even with just one of those things this week, it means a lot. That's all I have. I can't wait to see you next week. We have a great set of episodes coming out this month, something premium subscribers already got the list for, but I can't wait to see you next week for another episode. I'll see you then. Thanks for joining us for this episode as we explored another amazing moment from baseball history. You can help grow the show by liking us on YouTube and your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to head on over and sign up for the free email newsletter and the bonus show, This Week in Baseball History. Just go to www.rounders.substack.com. A special thanks to our premium subscribers that are helping us grow for just $1.25 a week, and to our starting 9 supporters, Nathan Halverson and Jack Wilson. You are the producers helping make this the top baseball history show out there. See you next week, and remember, there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.